welcome you to the 27th Wiesbaden Group meeting. As you know, the meeting will take place as of today until Friday from 7 to 10:30 Mexico City time. Friday's session will be a special session dedicated to the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, and you are cordially invited. During the 5 days, there will be simultaneous English-Spanish translation, so I recommend that you select the channel that you will use during the meeting. You can find a word icon in the bottom right to select the language of your preference, English or Spanish. As of this moment, I will begin to speak Spanish, so I invite you to select the language if you will participate during the meeting. Quisiera anunciarles.
I would like to announce to you that within the website of this event, you may find the agenda of the meeting and also the papers and the presentations of each of the presentations, and you can download them if that is your wish. I would like also to inform you that in order to be able to directly check what has been said, we have started with the recording, so later on we can make this recording public within the Wiesbaden Group website. The first topic of the agenda are the welcoming words on behalf of INEGI's chairman, Dr. Julio Santaella. He's already with us, so I give now the floor to Julio Santaella. Good morning, Julio. Good day to you. Good day, Arturo. I am so pleased to be with you.
Good evening, even if you're watching late. I will switch to Spanish, given that we have a simultaneous translation. Este grupo Wiesbaden sobre registro.
This Wiesbaden group on business records originally started in 1986 with an international roundtable regarding statistical frameworks applicable to the business sector. All of this under the Statistical Commission of the United Nations. In 2007, it switched to its current name. It is with the Wiesbaden Group, just like other city groups that have been established by the Statistical United Nations Commission. This Wiesbaden group is depending on the active participation of all the delegates and representatives that integrate it. The group is promoting the use of records and business activities for the collection and integration of data, and also for the dissemination of official statistical information under a structural format. I appreciate the Wiesbaden Directors Group for having selected INEGI for becoming the host of this 27th meeting of the Wiesbaden Group. This was reported to all of us in the 26th meeting that took place in Neuchâtel, Sweden in 2018. Now, on the 20th of September of 2021, we had to face many challenges. Obviously, the most obvious one is the changing format and date of this meeting. You may recall that originally this 27th Wiesbaden Group meeting was to be held by attending to the city of Mérida, Yucatan. But as you all know, this 2020 and 2021, we have been impacted given the COVID-19 pandemic that has changed our way of living and working. This is why we are now meeting under this virtual format a year after what was originally planned, yet we expect to be able to continue and bring to a good ending the works of this session. Now, These are environments to exchange experiences and opinions
Maßmaße immer für
in order
online-Aula zu
to the
engelsk.
maintenance
Til spansk.
and the use of statistical records and business activities. If you can please switch off your microphone. These meetings are touching areas that are conceptual and methodological to take advantage of the development of best practices in the area of business records for building up statistical frameworks. This virtual meeting has an advantage. It has allowed us to have more participants than what normally would be the case. At this point, we have 155 persons registered coming from 57 countries and 7 international agencies. The experiences that will be shared through these meeting are organized in 8 sessions in which we will approach different areas such as the current situation of the statistical business records, SDR, the challenges of all these statistical records, the way to interact with users, the novelties in products, data sources, and the tools for this business record, statistical information, conceptual and methodological challenges, and the records for globalization and multinational companies, the measurement, assessment, and improvement in the quality of information within the business statistical records, and the use of geospatial information for the integration and exploitation of all of these statistical records. Within the range of areas to cover, there is one that will be present here during the 5 days that will consider the impact of the pandemic given the presence of COVID-19. With no doubt, this pandemic has brought a series of problems to the statistical national offices that have led us to create strategies and mechanisms to continue collecting traditional statistical information in times where businesses have closed, and at the same time to be able to measure the impact of this in the economy of countries and its evolution. And here we will take advantage of the use and development of the statistical business records in the generation of economic statistical information. This is why let me share with you that from INEGI Mexico, we're doing an effort to support the strengthening of these statistical business records in the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean region. As an element that shows this interest, we have selected Friday, this last day of the week, to listen to the countries of the region and the critical elements for the follow-up of these actions in the region. I take this moment to thank each of the 8 meeting leaders of the sessions here that have worked with us in preparing the different presentations. I also thank ECLAC for their participation in the meeting that will take place on Friday the 24th. Let me appreciate also my colleagues from INEGI, because as you know, we're coordinating the meeting, but we will have also presentations during this event. We have 5 very important and intense working days ahead of us. We hope they will be of your interest. And well, we wish to finish this 27th Wiesbaden group meeting quite dedicated and motivated for everything we have to do in favor of our communities and societies. Let me appreciate your participation, reiterate our welcoming words to be a part of this 27th Wiesbaden group meeting on business records. So welcome. We thank Julio. It's a pleasure to have you with this meeting. Well, let me just share with you that within the meeting chat section, we have the different important recommendations regarding how to use. We have this information in Spanish and English. And let me share with you that we will be able to speak directly in our own language, but we will have the chat room open for your comments and questions. And you have general instructions there so you can use them. So with no further ado, let's go to the number 1 session of the week, which is a country progress report that I am to share with you. And we will share with you a brief presentation to let you know what is that has happened within these working groups all over the world regarding business registers. As you know, the country progress report is an element that we have within the Wiesbaden group and all their groups related with the groups of experts of UNECE, OECD, and also UN staff. So let me go straight into my presentation, and I will divide it into 2 sections. The first is a presentation where we will be mentioning the main elements, and then we will have a brief Q&A session. All of this in order to conclude in the following 45 minutes before my time is over. So if you could please upload my presentation and put it on the screen. Thank you very much. Let me share with you that since 2019, we have been using an online collection system that has been used here at INEGI. And this system, this information, allows the registers of the different countries to use this report and to upload it within the database in order to generate specific information.
Recording in progress.
From the different countries as time goes by. Now, this system, this database, will be transferred to the United Nations Statistical Division. We appreciate their support. So for them to administer, to manage it, and to make it available to all of the countries that are a part of the Wiesbaden Business Registers Group for their use. This is the content of the presentation. First, I will give you a recap of the reports received. Then we will go to the organization outcome regarding the business registers, then the progress achieved last year in particular. Then we will go into future plans, main challenges, and the progress, future plans, and main challenges related with COVID-19. As it was stated a few moments ago, this is going to be a critical area that will be present throughout our presentations during the week. Now, let me share with you now the different reports received by continent and country. Next slide, please. Within this slide, you may see the number of countries that started reporting their activity. Africa, 3. In America, we had 20. Asia, 5. Europe, 22. And Australia and New Zealand from Oceania. And in total, we have received 52 countries' reports from the 5 continents. We have to highlight that many countries in Latin America, where we have been jointly working with different agencies, basically together with ECLAC, in order to have in a multilateral way and try to look for the participation of the countries of our continent within this business registers data collection. Now, in regards to the organization of how the use of business records is doing and how do we do this within our national statistical offices, within the next slide, we're going to show you how is it that they have reported the statistical offices, all the business information. Now, in general terms, we can see that in average, we have 20.4 persons working within these uh, units, and a median is 8 employees. And from 1 to 5, there are 17 countries. From 1 to 5, 6 to 4 to 10 are 14. And in 41, we have 8 countries. Countries that registered lesser staff are Belize and Guatemala, that border with Mexico. And the countries that reported operating with the most number of staff members are Germany with 200, and the United States and Canada. Next slide, please. Something critical here is to know why these registers are being used for. And Dr. Santaella had already shared with you here, we had the need of having sampling frameworks in order to carry out an economic ranking, and that is the main use for our comparisons. But nevertheless, there are some other activities, such as the coordination of statistical programs and also for the collection of results through surveys. And also, more and more, we can see that countries are taking advantage of the information of the business registers in order to create economic statistical information and to obtain demographic information on business. The next slide, we are also asking you when the first works were done regarding business registers in the world. If it is true that many countries such as Norway, Finland, or Australia, that are the countries that have been registering businesses for the longest period of years, we can also see that in this current century, around 46% of the countries have started this business registers in the 21st century. Countries such as Poland, Japan, South Africa, or countries within the region such as Ecuador, Costa Rica, Chile, and we ourselves here in Mexico, we have been involved in this for a limited time, and this is not less important, but we are now giving more relevance to this type of statistical information. Something that we have asked about, and we will see it within the next slide, is the re-engineering for this type of countries. How is it that we have optimized our own records? And we can see how frequent they are, year-based. But it could be given the evolution of information technologies, and perhaps given to this, the re-engineering processes are far more frequent in recent years. Next slide, please. One of the important questions here has to do with the types of statistical units of observation in the business sector. And this is a question that changed since 2019, and we were asking about this only at the company level. And since 2019, we started asking in regards to other statistical units. And well, we value the comments and suggestions made to us by the Wiesbaden group in order to carry out these actions. So within this slide, we can see that the business sector will be reporting this statistical unit to support the business registers. We also have business groups, enterprise groups, also local units, establishments, or the legal units. Those are the ones that we use the most. But as you may see, it is very important to differentiate and how we can connect the different statistical units here. Within the next slide, please. Here we are sharing with you a dimension in regards to the business registers. We can see it within the number of companies, and we can see that 15 countries have less than 500,000 companies. And from then on, you can see 9 countries that have between 500 and almost 1 million, and then almost 5 million companies only in three countries. The next slide has the number of local units. Here we have 10 countries with less than 500,000 units, 4 countries that have more than 5 million units. There are 5 countries that have between 3 million and 5 million. Another important element within the next slide is the coverage in regards to what type of coverage and economic units are the ones we have. And we have 3 classifications. One of them where we are close to 100% or almost 90% in the different sectors, and the countries that have different sectors that are partially covered, or even others that are not yet fully covered. They have no coverage. So here we have the non-financial corporations are the ones that we have with 43% or 46 countries that have non-financial activities covered within our statistical information. And of those, we also have 46 financial corporations, general government. There are 8 countries that we don't have the information. Households, there are also 30 countries. So what we're trying to share with you here is that more and more we have a higher or a greater coverage in regards to all of the economic activities within the different countries. Next slide, please. We're going to share with you the main sources for updating the information, updating data sources. We have administrative data to update our business registers, yet we have 44 countries that use censuses and surveys for their data. We have statistical registers, 22, and other 9. It is important to see how we are using big data for the updating of the business registers. Basically, 2 countries, Brazil and the United States, is doing this. And many of us are starting to take the steps in order to update our information through the use of business registers, big data updating. Something else that we are doing is the geo-referencing. This is an additional element. The geographical reference available in the SBR, there is something very important here because we have to try to not only give the economic activity to the business records, but also the geographical reference. But we can see that more than half of the countries have the possibility of having a geographical reference in our business registers in a direct or indirect way with all of the other administrative records. Currently, we have 45% of the countries that do not have a specific geographical reference. In our personal case, the case of Mexico, we have a national statistical directory of economic units within internet that has been a great advantage in order to have within a same system that have to do with the statistical information of public businesses for all users. Let's go now to the section of how is it we have developed within the next slide. Next slide, please. This is what we've done in 2020. Let me share with you the main activities that we held in 2020. 47% of the countries provided us reports on maintenance activities, 32% activities related with statistical units, 30% of data sources, roles of SBRs, and in regards to future plans. Next slide, please. The categories that are the most frequent ones where we are considering the future plans, they do represent, first of all, the data sources usage coverage, almost to 30% of the countries, to work to improve quality, to work for the improvement of the different units, and IT considerations. In regards to our main challenges, next slide, please. We can here highlight the different categories where you can highlight maintenance, coverage, and now the next slide, that what we are sharing with you are the progress, future plans, and main challenges related with COVID-19. And since last year, we included what is related with COVID-19 with the statistical national offices so they can share their experiences related to the business records during the time of the pandemic. Now you can see here how 22 countries provided us their answers to this section, and we reported 54% that conducted activities in 2020 related to the pandemic, and the same percentage responded regarding future plans, and only 18% registered as main challenges the situation of the pandemic. So we were able to see activities for the activity and the challenges within the report and what is related with the pandemic that we are still.
Just to wrap up, we wanted to present everything we could get out of these surveys and that countries have reported to us. We believe this is of great importance because this allows us to identify possible work lines on behalf of the Wiesbaden group, as well as from international organizations and national statistics offices. I believe that the role that we play as chair country of the group has allowed us to support the coordination of some of the work carried out also regarding the United Nations Committee on Statistics and Trade and also related to a model of maturity of the business models that will be presented during session 7, I believe, on Thursday during our sessions. So I believe that this kind of report is very important, and the transfer of this technological scheme will be made so that it can be better used, so that we can better use all of the information throughout time. So let's go to the last slide, please. You can see there my contact information, and that would be the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions or comments to be made, please, shall we stop sharing the screen so that I can see the chat? Please stop sharing the screen. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments to be made that you wish to make directly or via chat? Ilaria Di Matteo, go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Arturo, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I wanted to thank you very much for this nice presentation of the outcome of the country progress report for this year. And I agree with you that it's very important to have this type of assessment. And the idea, this wealth of information is spread a little bit around the various meetings of the Wiesbaden group. So your idea, your proposal to make it more easily available through the development of a database so that they can be accessed, I think it's very, very important and very useful to share country experience and advances. And I also want to thank you very much, Arturo, as chair of the Wiesbaden Group and also member of the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics, that you have been really instrumental in coordinating, in better coordinating the activities in this area with the committee and the Wiesbaden Group. And we will look later on, as you mentioned, on the maturity model that is being developed by the Committee of Experts, where the inputs of the Wiesbaden Group will be very important. And we can also, looking forward, we can look at the how we can build on each other's work to advance in this area. So I want to thank you very much. I think it's a very positive outlook on country progress report. There is a lot of effort of country to constantly improve the SBR. And as you can say, as you said it, this provided an insight to the possible new work stream that the Wiesbaden Group may want to look forward in the future. Thank you, Arturo.
Muchas gracias, Hilaria.
Thank you so much, Ilaria, for your comments. I think that indeed it is very important to have the possibility to better and more modernly exploit all of this data and start accumulating all of that information that will surely be very useful for all of our countries. Are there any further comments or questions on behalf of anyone from the meeting, within the meeting?
Muy bien, pues creo que es Perdón, Rico Cohen, please.
Rico Conan, please go ahead. You
Yeah,
have the floor.
Yes, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I was very curious about the use of big data in the maintenance procedures for the business register. I cannot find all progress reports, so maybe somebody could tell me more about it, or is it not appropriate? It was Brazil and the USA.
Así es, Rico.
That is correct, Rico. The National Statistics Office from the US and Brazil. I don't know if at some point we will be mentioning a related topic during which we could cover this. Maybe in session 3. David Allen, our colleague from the Census Bureau, might be able to comment to this regard. And also our colleague from Brazil has a participation due on Friday, and surely he will also be able to comment at that time regarding the use of big data. We were watching some of the activities carried out, and it seems that there was a lot of creativity going on there, and I think that we all have to, in some way, start looking at how we can have further updating sources that are more affordable than what we have traditionally done, whether it's field work as we do in some countries, or administrative records, or indirect methods. But I think it's a very important topic that we need to develop within the group itself. And well, yes, we have to work on these activities further. Thank you so much for your interest in that point.
Thank you.
Pues no sé si hay algún otro comentario. No veo.
Are there any more questions or comments? I don't see any raised hands.
Tal vez todavía no lleguen a la Ciudad de México.
Maybe you haven't arrived to Mexico City yet. Okay, so thank you for your interest, and let's move on to the next point, the next session for today. Every day we will have a general moderator. On this occasion, it was myself, and two of my colleagues will also be playing this role, just to give the floor and go over and state the times so that they can be followed, since we know that this is very important, given the fact that it's not easy to host a meeting under these conditions virtually. That way everyone can have time to be at home or at the office, etc. So we're going to try to be very rigorous in terms of our time frame. Like I said, it's very important to comply with this so that everyone can be happy. So let's change and move on to session 2, related to the challenges for SBRs regarding contributions of the SBR to the production of entrepreneurship statistics, to national accounts, and to the measurement of digital economy, among others. So this session will be presented by our colleague from the United Nations. I'll give you the floor, Ilaria Di Matteo. Ilaria, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Arturo, and good morning again, Good afternoon to everyone. So we start today the Wiesbaden group with this session on challenges for SBR, and a little bit some more information on this session, why we wanted to have this session. We saw from the previous presentation that the role of business register is not limited anymore to the provision of survey frame, but here expanded to provide information on the business demography, and also is key for addressing new topics such as digitalization, globalization, and also enabling the use of integrating different data sources. So with this session, we really wanted to share a little bit experience of countries on the use of SBR and the issues the country are facing for the generation of new statistics or enabling different type of analysis, and also challenges in setting up and improving SBR. So we have a nice lineup, nice set of presentation ahead of us. And what I suggest is that we keep maybe the presentation to the allocated time of 15 minutes. If there are urgent questions that can be quickly answered, maybe we can answer on the spot, but otherwise we'll have a discussion session at the end of the first set of presentation. And then we will have, after the coffee break, we will have another set of presentation and continue the discussion afterwards. So without any further ado, maybe we go to the first presentation from our colleague from Statistics Austria, Sabrina Laufer, who will describe the use of statistical business register to map registration of legal entities in Austria. Sabrina, I'll pass the floor to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Very well, loud and clear.
Oh, very good. Okay, so I share my screen now and I start the presentation.
Very good.
Okay. Since May 2021, registrations of legal units for Austria are produced and published on a quarterly basis by Statistics Austria. The Statistical Business Register is just one part of the underlying database and cannot be used alone, as the completeness for compiling registrations is not given. Therefore, in total, about 40% of the cases are in the SBR. The remaining 60% are taken from the business register for administrative purpose. Thus, the title of this presentation is Use of Statistical and Administrative Business Register to Map Registrations of Legal Entities in Austria. It consists of 4 parts: introduction, method, results, and discussion. The focus of the presentation is the reflection of the definition of registrations and therefore the research question, what is a registration? As already said, the SBR can't be used only. Main data source is the ABR. In terms of the definition of registrations, we offer one possible answer and define a registration as the inclusion of a legal unit in the ABR under certain premises, which I explain later. Used data sources are from the ABR, are Commercial Register, Chamber of Commerce, Main Association of the Austrian Social Insurance Agencies, Chambers of the Liberal Professions, tax data, tax returns, and income tax data. The already mentioned use premises are registration in the
recording stopped.
Register,
recording in progress.
Registration with the Chamber of Commerce, registration with the Main Association of the Austrian Social Insurance Agents. Oh, I see I'm on the wrong side. No, I'm fine. With the Main Association of the Austrian Social Insurance Agency as an employer, with the main association of the Austrian Social Insurance Agency as a self-employed person, with the Chamber of Commerce of the liberal profession as a self-employed, with the tax and sales figures from the sales tax advance returns or income tax data are available. Furthermore, the definition of date of registration is the first sign of life in the used sources. That means the first registration is counted. As the NACE is not complete, there is the need of importation of NACE REF 2 codes by the Chamber of Commerce subject allocation, besides other sources, and estimation of the remaining ones by using NACE REF 2 distribution based on the new entries in the SBR. Last but not least, we exclude registrations of associations. The results for Q1 2019 to Q2 2021 are 19,679 to 15,073 registrations of legal units. Due to the relatively late availability of the underlying administrative data sources, the data on the registrations for the last 4 reporting quarters are shown as provisional and are revised when a new quarter is published. The changes in percent are higher for younger reporting periods, for example, for the fourth quarter 2020 and the first quarter 2021. The differences are due to the deliveries of the certain data sources. This means that at one point there exists a registration with the registration time X. At the next data extraction, there are more data sources available, and the time of registration may change. Further results show for the first quarter 2021, the highest number of registrations were counted. The figure shows the total counts from first quarter 2019 to second quarter 2021. Highest number of registrations were recorded in the economic activities, financial services, other services, personal services, and wholesale and retail trade. The registration statistic offers the opportunity to compare economic relevant time periods like the pre-corona time period and the corona time period. Especially the comparison and change in percent of the first half of 2019 with the first half of 2020, of the first half of 2020 with the first half of 2021, and of the first half of 2019 with the first half of 2021 are interesting. The results shown in the table demonstrate these changes. Very high changes are for the first half of 2019 with the first half of 2020 in the economic activity, transportation and storage. For the first half of 2020 with the first half of 2021 in the economic activity, wholesale and retail. And for the first half of 2019 with the first half of 2021 in the economic activity, wholesale and retail trade, as well as in accommodation and food services. This figure views the comparison of the registration counts of 2019 and 2020 by selected NACE 2 digits in percent. High positive differences do have the divisions manufacture of textiles and retail trade, except of motor vehicles and motorcycles. That means that the registration have increased in this period and that the corona crisis favored those economic branches. Nonetheless, there are a lot of divisions with negative differences in this period, like other personal service activities, real estate activities, social work activities without accommodation, sports activities and amusement and recreation activities, food and beverage service activities, creative arts and entertainment activities, accommodation, education, and last but not least, the economic branch with the highest negative growth in this period, travel agency, tour operator, and other reservation service and related activities. One very important point is that due to methodological differences, there is no direct comparison with enterprise birth possible. Nevertheless, this slide shows the comparison on NACE 2-digit level to illustrate differences. In 2019, in total, 65490 legal units have been registered in Austria, around 40% more than enterprise birth in the same reporting year. Huge differences on NACE 2-digit level are in financial service activities, aspect insurance and pension funding, real estate activities, human health activities, other personal, scientific and technical activities, other personal
Recording stopped.
Retail trade,
Recording in progress.
And motorcycles, and social work activities without accommodation. These differences are mainly caused through the different data sources, compiling method, coverage areas, or reference times for the analysis or the assignment of the units to economic branches according to NACE Ref 2. Here you can see a national and international comparison on the registration counts. Comparisons higher the quality of the data and are a good opportunity to classify the data. The focus on the national comparison is between the registration count of Statistics Austria and the counts of the active members of the Chamber of Commerce. The international comparison focuses on the registration counts of Statistics Austria, Germany, and Belgium. The national comparison shows in total 65490 legal units have been registered in Austria in 2019. In contrast to these counts of Statistics Austria, the Chamber of Commerce has 74703 new active members in 2019. It should be noticed that the number of active members is slightly higher in 2019 than the registration counts. The international comparison shows that the business notification in Germany published by the Federal Statistical Office of Germany are 10 times higher than the registration counts of Austria. 672,609 businesses are reported for 2019. The count for VAT registered enterprises in Belgium is 103,747, subsequently 1/3 more than in Austria. This result is interesting as a unit in Belgium for VAT registered enterprises is also the legal unit. Even so, the total count of enterprises differ. In 2019, Austria registered 694,829 enterprises and Belgium 1010635 enterprises VAT registered. Thus, Belgium has 1/3 more enterprises. Nevertheless, such comparisons have to be made very carefully as the circumstances differ a lot between countries. To sum up, since May 2021, it is obligatory to produce quarterly data on registrations. Statistics Austria delivers the data to Eurostat and publishes the data national. The compilation of the registration statistic is nearly free of decision by the member states, and the data sources differ a lot, as shown in the international comparison of Austria, Germany, and Belgium. Austria compiled the data by using the statistical and administrative business register, as well as selected activity rules. This method seems, in the case of Austria, the only way for compiling this data. The SPR can't be used as the one and only data source. Currently, further work on the compilation of one frame for all statistics based on the SPR and the ABR is carried out. Even so, the question on what registration is still relevant, and the results for the member states differ quite a lot. Thank you for your comments and attention.
Thank you, Sabrina. Very interesting presentation. And congratulations, you were exactly on the time assigned for the presentation. Thank you for this.
Perfect.
Maybe if there is, I'm looking at the chat, any immediate question on the presentation, we can take it now. Or I don't see any hand. Then I suggest to everybody, keep your question in your mind. We'll go through the other two presentations, and then we will reopen the floor for questions. Sabrina, thank you very much. We will
Thank you.
Come back to you in a little bit. Now, I'll pass the floor to Serena Miliardo from Istat in Italy. Sabrina, the floor is yours.
Good morning. A moment. First, the screen. There's a problem. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. You can hear me?
Yes, now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. I'm Serena Miliardo from Istat. I'm work on business register section. In particular, I'm expert on the business register enterprise group profiling activity. In this section today, I will present the first study on governance and digitalization, born thanks a collaboration with my colleagues of different domains, in particular expert on digitalization and SBS surveys on digitalization. The presentation, the main contents of this presentation, after a brief introduction on digitalization, we show the integrated database used in Istat on governance and digitalization, create also for this first study, and the model used to estimate, to give a measure of digitalization, a first measure, and to measure the impact of digitalization on the main variables like employment and labor productivity. And then in the end, some conclusion of this study. So we know that digital transformation has already begun to change organization, to change the market, and had given rise to new firm and industry, transformed the business model of the traditional industry, principal market. And business groups play an important role in this new production model. In particular, we want to analyze how the type of the organization structure of business groups, their governance, their size, their ability to attract foreign investment or expand into foreign markets could influence the way in which business group react to the digital challenges. And the scope of this study is to measure in isolation the different effects of digitalization on employment and labor productivity, considering the governance of a business group, the size, the organization structure, and also the sector in which enterprise carry out their activity. The analysis was based on integrated base of microdata which link together information belong to different domains. The set of information of the free control structure and governance for the business register enterprise groups for reference year 2018 has been integrated with a set of information collected from the enterprise respondents to the ICT survey for different reference year for 2015 from 2015 to 2019. So we use some economic data like persons employed, NACE, and value added that were linked from the business register and from the frame SAPS for the same reference year. We can hear? Okay. The digital indicator that we used for this analysis was the digital intensity index that was proposed by Eurostat and elaborated by ISTAT, thanks to the information collected by the annual ICT surveys that use a questionnaire harmonized at the European level and is based on the number of technologies adopted by firms or used by persons employed. Well, we link the set of information included in the business register enterprise group, in particular a set of classification that we develop during the study of profiling to better classify the population of business group by structure. In terms of degree of integration between the control legal unit, we divide the business group in horizontal business groups, vertical, and very complex business groups called the matrix groups, in which we can individuate more subholding that control which subholding control different operative segment. We can distinguish also group by governance. We can distinguish Italian groups versus foreign MNEs. Between Italian groups, we can include domestic MNEs, Italian MNEs, and domestic group. And also, we can have a classification by ownership, and we distinguish private groups versus public groups, and by side we classify business group into small, medium, large, very large groups, considering only national figures and basing on 3 variables that are employment, turnover, and assets. The DI is a micro-based index that measures the availability at firm level or different level of technologies. And used to classify enterprise with 10 or more persons employed in 4 classes of ICT intensity, based on the number of technologies adopted by firms or used by persons employed. In this way, we can have 4 clusters of digitalization level: very low, low, height, and very height, depending on the number of technologies adopted. The choice of these technologies depends not only by a core of variables collected each year, but also by specific topics that are included in the annual questionnaire to investigate emerging technologies of particular interest for users. So imply that the data are not perfectly comparable during all the year, but it gives us a trend of the level of digitalization. In this table, we can see 3 different tables. In the first table, we have the number of the respondents for each year, starting from 2015 to 2019, divided by the different level of digitalization. In the second table, we can see the same data in percentage, and we can see a first trend of digitalization. In particular, the situation is better respect the same index calculate on total population. In particular, we can see that during the year, we have an increase of the percentage of the respondent classified in the two height digital level, height and very height, a decrease of the percentage of the enterprise classified in the two lowest level of digitalization. The model used to measure the impact of digitalization on employment and labor productivity consider microdata and consider nice three digit and 4 classes of persons employed and the different classification of business group. Both models used are are all variables in logs that are estimated by cross section using ordinary least square for each year from 2015 to 2019. One model for each year for each variables. So in this picture, the main result, and we can see from the two table, the following two table, that the main result. Yes, and the main result are for M&As with Italian governance, but the global group had abroad, and present the highest coefficient from 0.65 in 2015 to 1.09 in 2018. And also we can see that the public group present more a better coefficient respect private one. The matrix groups present the height values respect the group with simple structures. In terms of size, the very large groups are the ones with a major coefficient. And while considering the activity sector, the enterprise in the industry sector are the one in the first place with a parameter of 1.15. This is the table with the I don't hear with the coefficient and classified by the type of group, and then we can say that the effect of digitalization on productivity seems less relevant respect the effect on employment. Should be due both to the time, to more time due to obtain. And also why I think that it's better to use a panel method for the estimation. And also we want to consider also in the next study data on 2020 in order to evaluate better the effect of pandemic emergency on M&As. So our conclusion. Digitalization has become one of the driver factors in the economic growth. In Italy, the digitalization innovation process is starting later than in other industrialized countries like in other countries. Anyway, the effort fielded by Italian productive system has showed some positive result in 2019. in particular in those enterprises involved in the globalization belonging to enterprise groups. The industry appears the sector where the effect of digitalization have implemented the best result in terms of persons employed, with an impact of coefficient more than 1. As regard the kind of structure, the very complex groups, the large groups, business groups, prevailing in terms of impact of digital innovation of employment. Thank you.
Serena, thank you very much again for the very interesting presentation, and also for being on time. Maybe we'll pass right away to the presentation of Valentin Garcia from Spain, and then we'll collect all the questions at the end. So Valentin, if you want to start, the floor is yours. Maybe you have to unmute yourself, Valentin. We see the presentation, but we cannot hear you.
Ahora, ¿me escuchan ahora?
Very good.
Vale.
Yes, very well. We can hear you quite well now. Well, thank you very much. Let me see if I can place my presentation on a full screen. Well, very good. Well, let me greet all the colleagues from all over the world, regardless what time of the day you are. We are going to have this presentation in Spanish. Nevertheless, my slides are in English. In basic, I will talk about the methodological decisions that we have adopted when we wanted to create the statistical demography business information, taking the business unit as the measuring unit. Now, the implementation of the business unit for the statistical registers, business registers, have been recently implemented in different countries. For this purpose, we have to develop different techniques, and the result of this is that at the end is we have to manage different types of companies. Simple companies, which are equivalents of the legal unit that has legal support, and the complex business, which is a business statistical unit that comes as a profile process applied on products of the company or the business. Yet the manuals that deal with the business demography seems to be always directed to talk to us about the simple business. There is a challenge in these manuals that will try to reflect the dealing of complex business or enterprises, more so in regards to demographic events measurement and reports. Here we will review the Spanish experience in dealing with complex industries. Let me relate to you some of the methodological decisions taken and that could somehow be centering in the theoretical framework, what has been our guidance in taking these methodological decisions. More so, while going into the technical details of the different decisions will be very difficult in a 15-minute presentation. Now, this presentation will contain 3 segments. First, I will review some of the guidelines and manuals of the demography of business published by international bodies. Then I will be referring to the identification, numbers management, and demographic events. Then I will go to several practical issues in outlining the demographic events. Then finally, I will share with you a couple of conclusions. Within these manuals of demographic statistical information, I have started with the Eurostat and OECD manual. This is basic manual for anyone who deals with business demographic statistics. The practical delimitations of the population of enterprises, births, deaths, and survivals are described step by step. Nevertheless, all procedures seem to be addressed to simple enterprises. Here we have another manual, which is the one issued by the United Nations European Conference, UNECE. It has to do with a clear progress from a theoretical point of view, but once again, all of the comments are referring to simple businesses. And finally, we have here what is this manual published this year regarding European business and statistical methodological registers and the roles of SBRs in the statistical reduction system. We appreciate that it is reference to profiling as a method to identify enterprises. It also shows or considers the continuity of complex enterprises without practical guidelines. We still have some questions awaiting for an answer. Then we go to the enterprise indicators regarding demographic events. The simple statistical units tend to be considered as the legal units used in administrative registers, yet the complex statistical units need other treatment. These units are made up of combinations of legal units according to different criteria: control for enterprise groups and profiling for enterprises. And therefore, statistical continuity has to do with the production factors. Here we have to analyze three elements: legal units, its hierarchy, and its employment levels. In regards to the continuity rules for enterprises, we have to point out that the group of criteria considered for complex enterprises is defined in a similar way as it is done for enterprise groups. Moreover, a complex enterprise exists in connection with the group to which it belongs, if in such a way that the continuity rules are established if the group stops existing or it leaves the system of the business registers. So by doing this, a complex active business in +1 that has not passed the continuity rules is considered as an entry in the SBR system, and they will have allocated a new identifier that will specifically activity status, kind of an entry. Now, a complex enterprise active in T having not passed the continuity rules, they are considered exits in the SBR system in the current registers of business year registers. Now let's see the demographic typology. Now we will tackle the classification of certain events linked to identifiers persisting or discontinuity. This aim is to facilitate the management of indicators and following certain diagrams, the IDT and identification. These two diagrams have the changes in the T+1 that will determine the demographic event for this year of reference. Within this first slide, we can see the decision and the presence within the system. The entries are codified as A1, A2, A3, and the other elements are classified with code P. These other slides will show us the allocation level in regards to the exiting of the system. Exits are codified as B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5. I have forgotten to mention that here we have an A0 area that has to do with new entries of units. The same way, in the diagram of exits, we talk about pure exits in two of the images that we classify as B0. And this has to do with the units registered. Here, we are going to see the births of potential enterprises. Now, it would be the A2 and A4 events. Here, we have this explanation here. For the A1 and atypical events, we have to check if the legal units that are new entries comply with certain conditions, such as potential deaths of companies, of complex companies, will have the B2 and B4 events, as we can see on the slide. Once again, for the B1, B2, B1, B3, and B5, an alternative check is needed, taking into account the legal units have the status of pure exits. Now we go into seeing some practical issues. We will start with the enterprise status. Simple enterprises will be taking legal units in case of new enterprises, yet complex enterprises will take the A2 and A4 complex enterprises, where the status will comply with one of the two conditions that are mentioned here. Within the decisions taken when delimiting real births, we have to highlight the matching process that is only applicable to simple enterprises. And the reason is that complex enterprises are the result of a compiling procedure of groups of companies, and that we assume that the register of groups of companies with all legal units within the national perimeter of the measure. Then other decisions are taken with manual controls and automatic allocation. In regards to the starting point, to identify the simple, the enterprise deaths. In the case of the simple ones, we have 3 units of pure exits that go from B0, and the ones identified by BE and BM, mercantile record register. For the complex enterprises, B2 and B4, and for B1, B3, and B5, it is checked if one of these two conditions are fulfilled of B0 or BE or BM will comply with either of these conditions. Once again, the most important element in the classification of the enterprise death has to do with the matching processes and apply to simple price enterprises, given the same reasons that we have already mentioned regarding profiling for important manual controls and the automatic allocation. Now, in regards to the survivals of enterprises, we consider 5 cases, and I will mention some of them. From simple enterprise to simple enterprise, the identification number. From simple enterprise to complex enterprise, and from a complex to a complex enterprise, and another one to a simple part, and another one to a complex part. Now here, let me mention that some of the decisions mentioned here are still under discussion. Finally, let me share a couple of conclusions. The first is that the Eurostat OECD Manual on Business Demographic Statistical needs a deep review. And the second concept is that the treatment of complex enterprises needs a better international harmonization. For more information, you can read the associated paper to this presentation. I thank you so much. And this is my contact info on the screen.
Valentin, thank you so much for the very interesting presentation. And thank you to you as well for keeping in the time frame for the presentation. I think we really listened to very interesting presentation. The first one from Sabrina on the Austrian experience on the compilation of new statistics on registration of businesses. We saw the experience of ISTAT from Serena on the methodology used to integrate data from the business register and other databases to study the impact of digitalization according to various characteristics of the enterprises, the governance, ownership. And then with the last presentation from Valentin is about the need to further share experience and develop practical guidance for the demographic event related to complex enterprises. So maybe I open the floor to other questions. I see some questions already in the chat, and maybe we could start a little bit from the question in the chat. Sorry, I had it open and now I lost it. It was from Steen from Statistics Denmark. And Steen, I don't know if you want to intervene.
Yes,
and,
I can do that. Yes, I just have a question for Sabrina. And first of all, thanks for 3 interesting presentations. And I also think the last one was very interesting, but I don't have questions for that, not now. But to Sabrina, we also have, of course, because of the COVID, so we also look into new companies in Denmark, and we saw a lot of registrations of new company, but only a third of them was active for tax reasons and VAT and could have employed and so on. So yes, I will ask you, can you also have that picture in Austria so you can see, is it a real company or just a piece of paper? So do you have an idea of that?
Thank you, Steen, for this interesting question. At the moment, we can't say it exactly, and we have to talk about what do you mean with getting active. As I presented, we have enterprise birth and registrations are more than 40% than enterprise birth. So this is maybe a picture. And another picture could be the difference between the registrations and the units in the SPR. And we find 40% of the registrations in the SPR. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina. Are there other questions? You can raise your hand in Zoom, or I'll go through the chat as well. So give me a few minutes to go through this, the chat. There was a comment on the chat, maybe while you guys think of the question regarding the presentation, if they could be shared with all the participants. And just to say that they are available on the website of the Wiesbaden group meeting. And if some are not available, they will be available soon, as some are being received as the meeting started. I have an intervention from Karsten. Karsten, would you like to come in rather than me reading the question? Let me see if I find you in the screen. Maybe here. Oh yeah. Sorry,
it was just a question. It was just a question, Ilaria, but you can take it on.
Okay, it will take me a little bit to read it in a meaningful way. You test
Well,
my.
then I can try it. Thanks first, Serena. I think that was an interesting presentation in a very difficult area, I assume. So much of this digitalization, of which there is a lot of discussion, it takes place, of course, all over, but much of it in the services producing sectors within, I mean, transport, education, health services, and so on and so forth. And it has been pushed forward probably over the last 1.5 years during the pandemic, this development. In your analysis, did you only include, I mean, traditional industries or goods producers, or to what extent did you also include services producing units in your analysis? And then secondly, I thought it must be very difficult to delineate what you term digital units, whatever these units are. I mean, not to get too many, not to get too few. Can you say something about that? And thanks.
Yes, about the sector, we include only service sector. If you can review the slide, you can see the difference between industrial sector and service sector. I want to precisate that this first approach on digitalization is made at legal unit level, not the complex enterprises, and is that in this period has launched the first surveys for collect information at end level. But the first experimentation showed that is difficult to interview the end. ISTAT decided to collect information at legal unit level, and then in the second step create the consolidated data for the respondent. And as a business register staff, we support my colleagues for the city surveys. And I know that the main difficulty to collect information digitalization are for quantitative response at level, not for qualitative. They are studying the method for report the data at end level. When, for example, in the case when some of the legal unit belong to the same hand are not respondent. And for more specific question on digitalization, you can write also to my colleagues that collaborate to the study. I hope to answer to your question.
Thank you, Serena. I think Carsten must be. I think you answered the question. Are there other interventions? Maybe if I can say something while you think of additional question. regarding the presentation of Sabrina, I thought it was very interesting, the development of the compilation of the statistics on registration. And I understand that the concept is not the same as enterprise birth in business demography. But can we use the business registration as a kind of leading indicators for the enterprise birth? And we looked historically a little bit at the correlation of these two indicators, and maybe it could be an approximation, a high frequency indicator to anticipate the business birth. And also, I wonder, I found interesting the presentation of Valentin on the methodology for the continuity rule for the complex enterprises. And I wonder if there are countries that are also facing the same issues, and if they can share some of the experience. So I maybe give the floor to Sabrina, if you want to say anything, and then open again the floor to countries that might have the same issue with the demographic event for complex enterprises.
Okay, if I understand it right, you would like to kind of match, or you want to correlate birth and registrations to see if registrations are correlated to birth. But I don't get it. What is your intention?
Well, I assume that the registration, you can have them quite in a timely manner. While business birth, you have to wait until you have the 2-year timeline to see if the enterprise has been active in terms of turnover and employment. So I wonder if you see in time series, for example, how the registration relates to the business birth. But probably you need more years than what they are.
Definitely we need more data for it, but it's interesting totally to see if a registration turns into an enterprise birth. So did I get you right? Okay. That would be very interesting, and Steen already kind of said it. That's interesting, and with his question, and yeah, we could see if we can do it in some years and make a presentation.
Thank you, Sabrina. Other intervention for any of the speakers? Then maybe I look a little bit at the organizer, Gerardo and team. Maybe we could go for a coffee break now and start the next session a little bit, not the next session, the other set of presentation a little bit earlier. Would that be okay from your side?
Sí, Hilaria. Sí,
bueno.
Creo que pudiéramos tomar un break.
Yes, I think it would be all right if we take a short 15-minute break, if that's all right with everyone. And we can come back. It's 8:40 Mexico City time, so we can come back at 8:55. So that's 15 minutes.
Thank you, Arturo. Then everybody will see you in 15 minutes, and we'll continue with the last two presentations of this session. Thank you all.
Muy bien. Hasta ahora. Pero ¿cómo lo desanclo?
¿Se le hacen vista? ¿A la derecha? ¿Arriba? ¿Vista? ¿Dónde están los...?
Adelante, Hilaria.
Muchas
Regresarnos
gracias.
buenos.
Arturo, muchas gracias.
Hilaria, the floor is yours. I thank you, Arturo. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a nice break, short break, and we are ready to continue with a set of two very interesting presentations. And I will pass the floor to Eduardo this is hard to pronounce, Larraguibel, from INE of Chile. Eduardo, the floor is yours. Hope you can find your way to sharing the screen.
Thank you, Hilaria. Hello to everyone.
Oh, very good.
We're very happy to be here. It's our first time as Instituto Nacional de Estadísticas de Chile. So I will switch to Spanish in order to have a smoother presentation. Is it okay?
¿Está bien? ¿Ya se puede ver la pantalla?
Sí, está bien.
Gracias, Hilaria. Bien.
Thank you very much. Okay. My presentation is Designing a New Statistical Business Register for INE Chile. And the presentation will and the current situation and the main elements with the new enterprise register. Let me explain it, and then we will share the main challenges that we have identified. We have here a new statistical business register, SBR, called the Economic Units Register, RUE in Spanish, to replace the Enterprise Master Frame, MME. Now it is used in the production of INE's economic statistics, as well as in particular surveys requested by other government institutions, and its main sources are as administrative and survey data, such as the Ministry of Economy regarding the statistical outcomes and results obtained by INE. In 2004 to 2018, we have the National Business Registers or Directory, then the Framework, MME, and then in 2024, we have projected to conclude the Register of Economic Units, RUE. This is updated 4 times a year, and it has companies that are understood as legal units. And they have to do with the main source for generating statistical information. INE has a team dedicated to the collection of information from enterprise groups, EGs, whose main goal is to collect and analyze information that allows understanding their legal an operational structure for use in the production of economic statistical info. This is in order to the processing and collection of data. This is currently working with approximately 150 groups directly with their executive officers. We have a good relationship that has been achieved over time, reflected in participation rates over 95%. And this data partially integrated is in the SBR's framework, where legal units have an identifier that will associate them to each of the groups. Of this 150 groups, we only have direct contact and the use of available information sources or the regulating entities. And these 150 groups are quite representative because they're about a third of the total account of businesses in Chile. Yet we know that there is a greater number of groups of companies within the country to which we cannot totally access to. Now, going back to the RUE purpose, the purpose of the RUE is to respond to the growing needs and methodological, conceptual, and technological gaps identified by INE teams. This includes an exhaustive and consistent set of economic units, enterprises, enterprise groups, establishments, and/or local units, and improve in the frequency of updates and traceability of the data, and have a platform that supports the collection, processing, analysis, and internal dissemination of SBR data, among other requirements. And basically, when we have the different general goals and what we have been comparing with other statistical offices, well, the use of current and new data sources and information, and to design and processing all of the collection of information through inputs, and to develop methodologies for the construction and maintenance of statistical units, the RUE construction and maintenance process, and then we have to obtain a live register, frozen frames, and support for the collection and processing of statistical operations in the best possible way. And if the register-based statistical purposes will allow us to develop statistical information, also with statistical information at the business level. Well, the main advances have been we started around 2019, 2020 with this project. We determined a diagnosis of the current situation of the MMEs, methodological, conceptual, operational, and of technological aspects. After, as a result of this analysis or diagnosis, we determine of the RUE designs general elements with the Eurostat and the UNEC, and we determine the RUE designs general elements based on the requirements and needs of the master guideline with the recent statistical information, And basically the yearly updates that will take place in accordance to the demands of the users, and also the statistical measures that will have to do with businesses and communities. Then we work in the harmonization of the definitions of economic units, legal unit, enterprise, enterprise group, establishment, and local unit. This was done with different teams of INE, and we started developing the profiling methodology designed for enterprises belonging to EGs, work in progress, and the preliminary proposal for adaptation of the GSBPM to RUE, including processes of primary responsible parties. And the team responsible within INE for each of these activities. In 2019, we worked in the harmonization of the definition of the economic units, and we considered the enterprise with a possible set of legal units, considering simple and complex enterprises, and formerly enterprise was equal to a legal unit. And in 2020, the business participation, we decided to work within the enterprise group and then the local unit concepts. There are still some standardized definitions pending. This has to do with the legal unit, the enterprise group, and we have to process and analyze the statistical information. The concern is that all of these definitions would have to be pertinent and online. And then we have these 5 definitions that were directly taken or worked from the main international reference as SNA, UN, SD, Eurostat, for example. We have started a profiling methodology that is part of the Eurostat registers of 2020, and then also in UNEC 2015 in regards to the general office. We have also used the enterprise group's experience and other exercises that we have developed, and also the results of a questionnaires on profiling that we conducted in 2021 with about 20 national statistical actions. As you may have noted and being able to respond to these polling, we got an answer from 21 statistical national offices. Some of the main outcomes and results are how to classify the different types of profiling with intensive and manual or light manual and automatic profiling types with different variables for enterprises and EG classification, economic activity, turnover, number of workers mainly. And the selection of enterprises for each of the types of profiling is carried out based on size, complexity, last profiling date, requests from the thematic teams, and evidence of organizational change.
Las principales fuentes de información.
The main data sources, remote and on-site interviews, given the pandemic, survey data, annual reports, and administrative and tax data information, and websites. And also we have variable update frequency between countries, and it depends on the priority in the classification of the enterprise of EG and the availability of information sources, of course. Another area in which we have worked is the proposal for adaptation of the GSBPM to the RUE regarding companies, in which we have the different groups that we have defined in a reorganization. The last topic for my participation is the steps and main challenges for the RUE implementation. The design and implementation of IT solution that supports the construction and maintenance of the RUE, to expand the information sources, identifying and selecting new data sources according to the design, and the potential new products derived from the RUE, such as profiling, business demography, and business dynamic statistics. For example, to continue with the development of the profiling methodology for the implementation of the new enterprise definition. It is planned to test a set of operational rules in 2022 based on the Eurostat manuals, and in regards to the manual profiling that will be developed, adapting the current work of the INE with EGs and improving integration with administrative data for the remaining identification of any inconsistencies that could come up with the implementation of the new methodology. For the remaining groups, we developed the automated delineation administrative records that will continue. Based on property records and registries. And we hope that next year we will be working within our work within the field with the business groups in order to provide a better product. And the main challenges are to guarantee access to and use of the necessary administrative data, successfully legal framework in Chile, and the request that this statistical office will have to the statistical information. And that's why we have an MOU in place. This is another challenge that has to do with successful development an IT system to continue the development and improvement of several methodological aspects, and to make a correct transition to the new SBR, timely communicating methodological and technological changes, in addition to managing user expectations and requirements. This is a project that will materialize in the year 2024. We are now currently in a stage in which we will be starting its construction very quickly. If there is any comment that you can share with us, we consider it to be very, very valuable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eduardo. Very interesting presentation, and congratulations to you for setting up this project for the improvement of your SBR in Chile. It seems to me that you have thought about all the new emerging needs for the SBR. Profiling is very important, and it is nice that you have considered all these requirements in setting up your project for the SBR. I suggest that we go to the next presentation. Eduardo, there will be questions, there will be comments, we'll take them after the next presentation. And I will pass the floor now to Michael Biddington on his experience in establishing and improving an SBR in Myanmar. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, everyone can see the screen and hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, hello from Australia and hello from Tuesday. I know it's very early for some of you, but yes, it's Tuesday morning over here. Anyway. Could be worse. Could be in New Zealand. I think it's 4 a.m. there. Anyway, so my name is Michael Biddington. I'm a statistician from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but I'm not here to present as an Australian ABS person. My boss is on the watching, so she knows I've said this. I'm here to present as my role, former role as a statistician from the UN, from UNSCAP, regarding the development of a statistical business register in Myanmar, working with the Central Statistics Organization of Myanmar. So just quickly a bit of history about the project. The Central Statistics Organization of Myanmar developed the SBR. We just supported them. It was officially launched in 2019. Its IT platform is based on the Asian Development Bank's generic SBR that has been actually deployed in several countries, and their help was greatly appreciated and fundamental. UNSCAP supported the development of the team and of the processes, which I myself led. And the CSO SBR was used for economic and business related surveys, including COVID surveys for the first time in 2020. I think the history is very interesting for this because it really gives you an understanding of why this occurred and even why such a developing country like Myanmar was putting the effort into developing an SBR. The start of the SBR began actually with the Myanmar Business Survey, a very large, wide-scale, a very large survey supported by DFID and other aid agencies, including the Australian, an attempt to get a better understanding of business situations in Myanmar. And the only available survey frame was based on the Ministry of Labour's data, a list of all employees. And the survey frame was of such poor quality that the results of the actual survey themselves were actually pretty inaccurate. I think they suggested that 30% to 40% of all businesses in Myanmar were in the manufacturing sector, which is, this is by count, which is very not accurate for any country in the world. And it was also dramatically more expensive just because of the sampling errors. So the project pivoted to actually try and investigate options for a new survey frame or a new SBR. And the UN, this is working with the United Nations Development Programme, so UNDP, and the CSO collaborated, and they identified local governments as the best possible source of information, as local governments maintained what they call business licenses, but it's really actually a local property tax for every business had to pay. So they actually collected taxes and registration data from every business every year, which is pretty fantastic, actually. And they attempted to do the first the data request in 2017 using an Excel template for all 330 local governments using an Excel spreadsheet. It didn't go well. This was when myself, the UNSCAP, joined the project. And between 2017, 18, 19, UNSCAP, Asian Development Bank joined the project, and we did the best we could to make sense of the data, clean it, understand what occurred with the process, and try to improve it. At the same time, a lot of work was done in developing the SPR system. So that was the ADB's generic SPR was then localized for Myanmar. So it was in Burmese, it was translated to Myanmar language and met the data structure for them, including the setup of a server in their headquarters. The second data request was then launched in 2019, for which a lot of work can be put into, and was actually much more successful. And then in the end of 2019, we did the official SPR launch at the World Statistics Day in Myanmar, at a big event we had, which was very fun. And in 2020, the new SPR was put into use for the first use of surveys, predominantly the Asia Foundation's Myanmar Business Environment Index survey, but also for some COVID actually related surveys. And in 2020, working remotely, we were able to actually load the ADB's generic SPR, which had been modernized for Myanmar, with new data, with the data that was collected from the second request. Now, I could talk to you about 150 different things that happened in this project, and I could talk for 20 hours. Ilaria's probably heard me talk for enough on this topic before. But the key lesson I really had from this project that I think actually applies for a lot of other people in various different situations is you really must invest in engaging with and understanding your data providers. And when I mean engage, I mean establish mutual understanding. That is, you to understand their processes and their purpose, and for them to a detailed level, and for them to understand you in the same manner. As you can see, this is the photo we sent from a workshop. We couldn't fit everyone in the photo. So there actually had to be 3 separate photos, because we had people from local government and a few other government levels from every state and region in Myanmar, all met in Yangon. And we went for 3 days. And in those 3 days, we had everyone present their processes of how they registered businesses, so we understood it intimately. And we also had us, the CSO, and myself present on the purpose of the CSO SPR and how we were using this information and why it was important. And it was just the 3 most productive days of my life. We learned so much about each other. The data providers were able to, the local governments were able to actually solve problems with the collections we were having. They answered questions we didn't even know to ask. This included one absolutely massive one in retrospect, which was that the data collection wasn't capturing all the businesses sitting in markets, because the markets were exempt from the business licensing tax. And because we were just requesting all the businesses registered, all the business licenses, they didn't give us that. Once they understood the purpose of our collection, that we were trying to build the business register for the purpose of economic statistics and surveys, they said, oh, you should get these as well. And thankfully, they had the information as well because they maintained a market list. And so from that meeting and from a lot of other engagements, we transformed the template, the collection tool. We changed the timing. We moved it to October when it had gone earlier in the year, because October was a month after they'd finished the financial year, but it was also during the lull period. So that was the best time for them to provide the information. We updated the template for the language so that it used terms and wording that they understood, not moving from statistical language and standard definitions. We removed a lot of the questions and changed some as well. So, initially everyone had their requirements thrown in, and we've gone, well, that was too much work, so we're going to reduce it. One very notable one was the initial form had the question of when was this business registered? What year was this registered? And we changed that to, was this a new business registered this year, or is it continuing, aka it was operational last year? And the reason is because the few local governments that actually had populated the information, the only way they could do it, because these people do not have databases. I should tell you, the local governments of Myanmar do not maintain modern databases. They have spreadsheets. And what I mean spreadsheets, I mean actual spreadsheets, not in Excel for many of them. So they would have to look each time for each business and go back year by year by year to find the first year they registered, which is why very few people did it. By just changing it to, is it new or continuing, they were able to just look at last year and then update it from that information. We provided a template filled in with dummy results of correct answers and incorrect answers so that people had an idea what a correctly filled out template looked like and what an incorrect one was, using all the different examples we had from previously incorrectly filled out templates. And we also provided an explanatory document which explained the process, how we were going to do it, what was the collection, what was the purpose. And we also included the report that we'd written on the previous collection, which was, you saw the image from before, which is also available on UNSCAP's website, and of course linked to my report. And then of course we added the new template as suggested. And the results were pretty spectacular. We went from 227,000 businesses to 477,000 businesses. At 227,000 businesses, it was the biggest list of any business in Myanmar, and it doubled in size. We only had license fee data, which is how much money was paid, which is the key sizing variable for 41% of businesses. We got up to 99.8%. Pretty much every single local government gave us the records for nearly everything, which was an incredible improvement, which really helped. We got employment data for 32% of businesses. Previously, we barely got 1 in 20. And we already get capital information, which is level of investment, for about 1/3 of the businesses. But I will have to say the quality on that data, because it's a self-guessed person by someone visiting the business, wasn't great. But other key factors was that the data was collected in 4 months rather than 8, and it was a lot less work. And as I mentioned before about how we changed the question from year of registration to new or continuing, we only had 10% of businesses covered with that information. That was usually from the few places that had modern databases, aka Yangon. Well, we got it up to 83.9%. And I will remind you all that for a majority of these local governments in Myanmar, they still maintained paper records. So that was still a lot of people checking last year's registrations for a lot of businesses. Now, and I'm under time, Malaria. Last slide. In summary, the initial idea they had in 2016 to go to local governments was a good idea. But a lack of engagement with the data providers made it much more difficult than it needed to be. And every country is different. I can't imagine, or I don't know of any other country which collects data from 330 different sources or agencies, but the lesson of engaging with your providers is true for all. But we can all improve our processes. We can all engage better with our data providers, because I promise you there are opportunities that you don't know about. My most recent project was a collaboration between the Australian Bureau of Statistics and the Australian Taxation Office to update the main data pack data we receive, which is the foundation of the Australian Business Register, the ABS Business Register. As part of that project, we identified improved contact information, just names, addresses, emails, though we estimate are going to save the ABS about $200,000 a year. Not a huge amount of money, but something that was very easy to implement and required minimal effort. And it was very obvious to the people from the Australian Taxation Office, but wasn't to us because we just didn't know it existed. And so we learned a lot. So by engaging with each other, we had that advantage. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Michael, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about this, the project that you had in Myanmar, and also drawing some common lesson that can be drawn by their experience. You were perfect with timing, so thank you, both of the speakers. And now I open the floor for a discussion. I'll check in the meantime the chat to see if there are questions on the chat, but please please feel free to raise your hand or unmute your microphone so that I can call you in. Maybe I see a comment from David. David, do you want to come in? I can read it loud, but I'm sure you will be better in sharing your thoughts.
Sure. Thanks, Hilaria. And I'm trying to start my video, but I can't. So this question is for the panel. So in the United States, policymakers are keenly interested in information on entrepreneurship statistics, such as the number of business births and their employment. For example, policymakers have expressed interest in weekly or monthly data in terms of the number of business births and their associated employment. So I had some general questions for the panel. First, I'd be curious to know more about how other countries respond to these data requests and if they are publishing these data at a high frequency, such as weekly, monthly data, or even quarterly. Second, if countries are not, are they modeling business births? And I'd be curious to know more about those statistical models. And because of the lag, and I know there's a lot there, so I'd be curious to hear from the panel, or if there's any reference material they can put in the chat, I'd be interested in that. So thank you in advance for your response. Thanks, Hilaria.
David, thank you for raising this topic of entrepreneurship. There is a little bit also, for your information, within this this committee of experts on business and trade statistics. Just very briefly, but there is a task team on business demography, dynamics, and entrepreneurship, which, by the way, Inehi is the tasking leader, and the topic of entrepreneurship is one that is being raised very much because of this growing demand by the policymakers on providing information on entrepreneurship. So I'm happy that you brought it up, because I would also be interested in learning how the participants are dealing with this concept. I don't know if additional issues, and then I'll bring it back to the speakers so that they react to David's question. Any other hand? Then maybe let's have a round back to the speakers, and then I have maybe some question for the last two presentations. Shall we go? Shall I call on the speakers, or do you guys want to raise up? Maybe we go in the order they presented. Sabrina, would you have any reaction to David's question?
Do you mean me?
Yeah, Sabrina, sorry, yes.
Okay. And the question is if it's possible to have data on enterprise birth by monthly or quarterly? No.
No, it's more if there are, if you have, for example, in your country, the policy request to provide data on entrepreneurship and on a high frequency basis, and if you do, how you compile.
We're not doing. No, we don't do it.
Okay.
It's just yearly.
Very good. Serena, from your side, in ISTAT?
No, in ISTAT we don't do estimation. We produce only yearly date on in this team.
Thank you, Serena. Valentin, from your experience from Spain.
Nosotros hasta la pandemia solo...
Up until the beginning of the pandemic, we would only provide statistical data on a yearly basis. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have started to publish and compile quarterly data, but based on a very direct exploitation of the starting sources, which have to do with Social Security and I think that's it, Social Security. So we only have that source of information, and differentiating legal employment units on the one side and persons that intervene or that exercise an economic activity.
Thank you, Valentin. Any reaction from Eduardo and Michael?
En nuestro caso, no producimos estadísticas de demografía empresarial.
In our case, we do not produce any statistics regarding enterprises, but in the context of the task that we are carrying out right now, we have been in contact with a data provider that since about 4 or 5 years ago is automating the registry of enterprises and companies and could provide us potentially with online data regarding this issue. Up until now, we have had a good reception, but we still have a lot of work to do to this regard.
Thank you, Eduardo. Michael, any reaction from your side?
Yes, actually, I can very proudly say, though I had very little to do with this, Australia is now producing weekly payroll reports. Publication, sorry. Oh, that's right, it doesn't have a code. So we've been very lucky with the quality of our administrative data that we have an actual, our national payroll system actually provides almost real-time information. We have information as of about 2 weeks or a week lag. It's called single touch payroll and people have to update it constantly. So it's been giving us, we're effectively publishing weekly payroll information that is up to date as of at least a week and a half, or even for that week for majority of businesses, which has been very interesting. And you can even look at when lockdowns have been announced and see the impact in data very quickly. If you look now, you can see the poor state of New South Wales, which is currently in lockdown, as well as my poor state of Victoria, which is also in lockdown, and you can see the actual impact on payroll. We've also moved to a quarterly business demographic information. So we've moved our counts of businesses by entries and exits from an annual to a quarterly. We were planning to do that actually anyway before COVID. It's just COVID gave us the motivation to go ahead. I will also add that the Australian Business Register, which is another government agency, which ABS collaborates very closely with, but they are their own agency. You can get hourly business registration statistics if you were so inclined. You can go and run a query every day and they'll tell you how many new businesses were registered, how many were cancelled. The quality of the cancellation or the death statistics is limited, realistically speaking, because the difference between when it's cancelled on the register and when it's cancelled in the real world is quite a gap. So I would not recommend that the deaths are a quality indicator of real ceasing in economic activity. You need the quarterly business demographic statistics, which is based on tax data, which is more reliable. But for the births information, it is very accurate and very timely because the process itself is relatively quick, with most people able to register within a few hours. So yes, we do provide very quick response to that data, but we are very much, while I'm very proud to say we've responded quickly, we are very much the benefits of other government agencies' programs to produce such high quality administrative data that makes this possible. So what I would say to my other fellow statisticians is I'm just thankful the other guys did most of the work. And I'm not sure you can follow us, but maybe you can get your tax office to learn from the Australian Taxation Office to implement this, because it's really cool data. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think this goes a little bit in the direction that the communication with the admin data sources is important. That's something that you highlighted in your presentation in terms of acquiring data. but also maybe influencing a little bit the way they collect data, and maybe putting an emphasis on the need of frequent updates of the original data sources. I see, thank you all the speakers. I see now Rico and then Augusto. Rico, you want to go first?
Yes, okay. So at Statistics Netherlands, we also publish on a quarterly basis on the number of births and deaths. But I'm not sure whether they use estimation techniques for this. So we have a relatively recent statistical business register. So most of it is counted from the business register by comparison. But I'm not sure if there are extra measurements necessary, because the data is published by another department. But I can, of course, provide some extra information if necessary.
Very good. Thank you, Rico, for sharing this information. Augusto.
Good morning, Augusto de los Santos from Dominican Republic. Voy a hablar en español para poder explicar
I will
bien.
be speaking Spanish to try to explain the situation that we have in the Dominican Republic. When it comes to the registry creation at the entrepreneurial level, we are still at the level of a company directory. However, we have still a lot of questions, especially in terms of how to create these links. Historically speaking, our directory is based on the sources being used in entrepreneurial or company registries, meaning information on social security and other sources that are administrative from different sectors that we cross-reference and unify. And so based on that, a part of that is updated via telephone or through surveys, and that strengthens the registry. And that way we establish prevalence rules, and after that period of updating, we have a consolidated directory. We want to migrate towards a sole company registry, and that there we have to consider the problem of how we create those company groups and how we follow up on them. We have another serious situation in terms of formality and informality here in the Dominican Republic. 57% of employment is informal employment, meaning that they're not registered for tax payments or social security. So I would like to know, especially from our colleague from Chile, who might see a similar situation to ours, or maybe Mexico's experience, that I believe that they have also mentioned this. I want to know what should be the steps taken in order to make that migration right now from the situation we find ourselves in to that creation of a registry. Thank you.
Thank you, Augusto. Eduardo, do you want to react? I think let me see. Oh, here I see you. Go ahead.
Sí, voy a responder en español.
Of course, I'll answer in Spanish. I don't know if we are the ones that should answer that question, considering that we find ourselves in a very similar situation as the Dominican Republic. However, regarding the transition that you were mentioning, we have been lucky to find support from a project being carried out in the region with Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia about having to do with integrated statistical systems. We have had the opportunity of working with consultants and share our experiences in that framework. We have also had contact with other statistical offices from Spanish-speaking countries such as Mexico and Spain. And also, as I mentioned in my presentation, we made an international consultation to this regard as well. We also have a team that has been working for over 10 years with entrepreneurial groups in a similar way to what you have. So in some ways, we have those little advantages that we are trying to exploit, complementing them also with taking advantage of the statistics and the administrative data that we have here. So there's a sort of synergy between several projects in parallel from INE and other statistical offices in the region. And that has somewhat facilitated the development of this project.
Thank you, Eduardo. I see the hand of Gerardo. Gerardo, do you want to come in?
Gracias, Hilaria. ¿Sí me escuchan bien?
Thank you, Hilaria. Without a doubt, this is a very important issue in the case of INEGI in Mexico. We have been working for several years now on a coordination scheme in the framework of the National Statistical and Geographical Information System, in which we join several administrative sources in our technical specialized committee of the National Directory of Economic Units. In this case, the communication that we have established and that makes it possible for us to feed our business registry allows us to work with the administrative sources, for example, from Social Security, in order to be able to relate, in this sense, for example, the number of people occupied towards economic unit, the birth of economic units that we have identified in our business registry. So these elements for us are very useful because they allow us to first have an updated business registry, and secondly, they also allow us to carry out an analysis of people occupied based on the activities they are working in. As you know, in Mexico's case, just like in the United States and Canada, we use the North American Industry Classification System. As you know, that classification of activities allows us to categorize occupied personnel, in this case, through our IMSS, our Social Security institution, with the economic activities recognized in that categorization. So that allows us to identify these activities and the occupied people based on the activities that they carry out. And we also have very useful and valuable information to update our registry that way. I would like to highlight that we're going through very specific efforts right now. I think Eduardo Larraguibel was already showing us this this research being done by our colleagues from Chile regarding the situation in terms of profiling and characterization of entrepreneurial groups. So we are also focusing on especially large units, meaning we call this subcategory of our registry the business priority group. We have identified these kinds of businesses. We're talking about the case of Mexico, just to give you some numbers. We're talking about 52,000 companies, when we're talking about approximately 250,000 offices or facilities. So we are going through great efforts in terms of focusing on that segment, for which cooperation has been extremely useful through this committee that I mentioned. And I believe that we also mentioned this in the answer we provided to our colleagues from Chile. So that was it for my intervention. Thank you, Hilaria.
Thank you, Gerardo. I saw earlier, maybe Sale wanted to come in.
No, thank you, no.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
No. This was very useful. Thank you. And I see also in the chat there are a lot of reaction to David's question, and also I think so. I would refer to the chat to everybody, and there is also the Eurostat. Tatiana shared the information that Eurostat publishes some experimental statistics on a quarterly basis of birth and death, so that additional information can also be found in the link she has provided. I know we are running a little bit close to the end of this session. I don't know if there are any last quick comment. I can give you the floor. Tatiana, did you want to come in? I see you are muted.
Yes, I wanted to comment on this relatively new data we publish in Eurostat. And these data were voluntary up to the end of 2020. So they were sent by some countries to Eurostat on a voluntary basis. And therefore, there are not also some long surveys available. So the seasonal adjustment could not be done properly. But from the second quarter of 2021, the data are legally binding. So they will be getting better and better as regards the quality. And it's interesting to follow this link for the updates. So for the moment, there is one Statistic Explained article where the analysis is available on the data that were received so far. And I don't know for the moment when is the next update planned, but this is at least the link where you can then access the information. Thank you.
Very good, Tatiana. Thank you for sharing the information. I would have many more questions for the speaker, for each of you, but I'm conscious about the time. So I want to thank all the speakers for the very interesting papers and presentation. I want to encourage all of you that you are in the meeting to share your views and contact the speaker if you have any additional question that we were not able to pick up today. And thank you all for your contribution and intervention. I think I'll pass the floor, the torch to Enrica for the next session of the Wiesbaden group meeting. Thank you all.
Muchas gracias a Hilaria y a todos los participantes.
Thank you, Ilaria, and all participants in this second session of our Wiesbaden group meeting. Now we are going to move on to session number 3, having to do with innovations and new ways of interaction with users. Leading this session, we will have Enrica Morganti from Eurostat. So welcome, Enrica. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to this session 3, which is on innovation in business registers, new ways of interaction with users. So we would like to have an exchange of experiences on new ways to serve users using business registers, new ways of developing products for them, methods, new indicators, or using business register data to link to other statistics, derive new statistical output. And we have 3 papers in this session covering different aspects of these innovative ways. One paper will be presented today, and 2 papers will be presented tomorrow. So the first paper today has been prepared by Masahiko Yaji, Tetsuya Yoshida, and Kenta Tsuji from the Statistics Bureau of Japan. It's a paper about the derivation of early register-based statistics covering establishment, enterprises, and all industries by region, that is to be used during the years when the economic census and the infra census surveys are not conducted. And the results were published for the first time this year, and the paper describes all the data sources and the methodology used. So I'm pleased to give the floor to Masahiko Yaji, who is Deputy Director at the Statistics Bureau of Japan. And the floor is yours. Just to remember that each presentation is foreseen for 15 minutes, and then we will have time for the discussion. Thanks a lot. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Masahiko Yagi, and I work for the Statistics Bureau of Japan. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to give this presentation today. And let me share my presentation file. Can you see the top page of my presentation? Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the new output of the business register in Japan with co-speaker, Mr. Yoshida and Mr. Tsuji. Yeah, we are trying to make economic statistics using the data of business register, and we call it register-based statistics. So I want to introduce how to make it, and why we make it. Next slide. Yeah, my presentation consists of 4 points. The first, brief introduction to the business register in Japan. And second, third, I want to introduce our economic census and annual business survey as the main data source for the business register. And the last one is our efforts to make statistics from business register. So first, this is a picture of our business register in Japan. The business register is developed by integrating the various statistics surveys, such as economic census and the administrative records information, for example, labor insurance data. So the main data source is the economic census, but we utilize the various data and they are stored in our business register. The business register mainly aims to provide the appearance frame every year. We call it annual frame as a sampling frame for business surveys conducted by the national and local governments in order to reduce or equalize the burden on respondents to statistical surveys. Yeah, this is our business register, and next, I'd like to explain the economic census. Yeah, the objective of the economic census are to identify the actual situation of business activities of establishments and enterprises, as well as to identify the comprehensive industrial structure in Japan. The economic census in Japan consists of 2 surveys. One is the economic census for business frame. We call it ECBF, which identifies the basic structure of establishments and enterprises. And the other one is the economic census for business activity, ECBA, which identifies the situation of economic activities of establishment and enterprises. The details are in the next slide. Okay, so ECBF is focusing on clarifying basic structures. So yeah, it mainly surveys The 8 main survey items is name of establishment and enterprises, or name of, or addresses of establishment enterprises, or industrial classification, and so on. On the other side, ECBA is focusing on accounting matters, so it mainly surveys their cost, added values, and so on. So the ECBA is more detailed survey than the ECBF. Anyway, they are both complete surveys. Yeah, I mean, they cover all establishments and enterprises, and they are conducted once every 5 years. So I can say our business register is accurately updated twice every 5 years using their results. And this slide shows, strictly speaking, some establishments belonging to some industries are excluded from the object of the economic census. Yeah, but it's not important for today's topic, so I can go ahead. And this slide shows the utilization of the economic census. Of course, we use the result for updating the business register, and also used for example, for calculating some taxes, and it can be one data with the national accounts, right? The GDP. Yeah, they're just for your reference. And next, I'd like to explain our new annual business survey. This is also used for updating the business register. As I said, ECBA is focusing on the account matters and ECBF is not. So for the years in which the ECBA is not conducted, we established a new annual business survey in 2019 through the integration and reorganization of existing statistical surveys. Yeah, ABS is a large sampling survey and is focusing on accounting matters, so we can clarify the condition of economic activity annually. Here, you can see these pictures. We conduct once every 5 years ECBA, and 4 times every 5 years we conduct ABS. And thanks to ABS, we can make it possible to grasp the economic structure of the major industries that account for over 90% of GDP. Thus, it improves the accuracy of national accounts, and also the results of this survey are used to update the business register every year. Okay, let me move on to the final topic, register-based statistics. This is our trials, and as I said earlier, we have some business surveys of economic censuses, and we established new annual business surveys. So we can identify the economic structure every year to some extent, but there is also a need to consider more useful products of the business register. Especially, we think making small area statistics will be valuable, because the ABS can only grasp nationwide economic conditions. In other words, ABS can't grasp the economic conditions of small area. And as the business register contains information on all establishment and enterprises, So we think it could potentially be used to produce statistics covering all industries by region. Yeah, it's similar to an economic census. So yeah, I can roughly say we could make any statistics by business register. So So we have been trying to produce statistics by aggregating the business register or annual frame. Yeah, this is the image of our latest annual frame, which is of 2019. We consider to make statistics simply adding up the data of annual frame. But as I said, we are using various data sources to update the business register, so some estimation is necessary. Yeah, I will explain necessity in the next slide, but I want to explain this picture. Yeah, this is a simple picture of the data source of the 2019 annual frame. And as I said, we use also administrative data, but this is rough picture, yeah. And this picture says, for example, here we have 2019 ABS data for the enterprises which fall under manufacturing. So we use ABS data. And here, agriculture enterprises, it's not a target of ABS now, so we use ECB data. Yeah, so they have their different data sources respectively. And next slide shows the necessity of estimation. Yeah, there are some bottlenecks to make statistics. For example, since the ECBF is not a survey focused on accounting information, so we don't have added value data for new enterprises or individual proprietors found in ECBF here. So yeah, of course, when we try to make a statistics of added value, we want to add up all their added value. So all enterprises should have an added value. So yeah, we performed an estimation. The estimation method is here, and it's similar to hot deck imputation. Yeah, we divided corporations into several groups based on their industry, number of employees, and sales, etc. And for each group, we created a model to estimate the added value from their sales and number of employees. So this picture shows a decision tree image, and their respective groups. And for each group, we made a formula. Say added value equals sales cross something plus number of employees cross something, something like that. Yeah, and after estimation is done, all establishment and enterprises have added value, so we can simply aggregate them. Yeah, after estimation, we can simply aggregate the annual frame data for 2019, and we produce the statistics for such as sales, number of employees, added value by region. Yeah, this is a image of a spreadsheet of one city. And we published this result on June 30th. 2020. Yeah, but this is a trial aggregation, so we have only a Japanese page now. So finally, I want to talk about this try and future plans. Yeah, we will make further effort to improve the accuracy of estimation, and at the same time, yeah, other economic surveys statistics are also being changed, and they are complementary. So we need to comprehensively consider the role and objectives of the register-based statistics. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So let's open the floor for the questions for this presentation, and then tomorrow there will be the next two presentations and we will have a separate discussion for those two. So is there any curiosity about this estimation method? I think this is a very key topic, because to produce statistics directly from the statistical business register, indeed this is a necessary step to fulfill the missing data that you may have in a statistical register, which is basically used as a survey frame. So are there any other experiences from other countries, similar experiences? No, I don't see anything in the chat. So maybe I have a question then. It's just a curiosity more than a question. So yeah. Can you say something more about your estimation method in regard to how do you deal with the different reference years of the data? So how do you estimate not only the missing variables, but also how do you bring forward the data over the years from one census or from one survey to another?
Oh yeah, thank you for your question. And yeah, we conducted a simulation using the complete data of ECBA 2016, and so we okay, so we have to imputate the data of missing data. So yeah, this method is, sorry, I had to say, yeah, we have programs, existing programs, so, and yeah, this is a, oh sorry, sorry, my English is not good, so yeah, details of the estimation, so is, I have no answer, I can't answer immediately, so give me some time to think, and I will respond to email. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So let's have another look to the chat. I hope my question was clear, but okay, we can also continue the discussion if you want to by mail. I don't see any other question. So maybe you can stop sharing the presentation so that I can see if there are hands on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I see there is a question maybe from Ilaria.
Thank you, Rika, for passing me the floor, and thank you for the very nice presentation. And my question is a little bit on the side because it's not directly related to the method for deriving statistics directly from SBR. I wonder if, though, any part of your statistical business register is published, is disseminated, since you use the business register to derive statistics. Is there also an effort maybe to disseminate some part of the business register or not? Thank you.
Thank you. So Yeah, we have published these statistics. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't, I don't understand your question precisely.
The question, I think, is whether you disseminate, you give to the public part of the business registers.
No. Yeah, business register data is not open, but the statistics is we can disseminate. Yeah. When we aggregate this, yeah, we can publish.
At aggregate level, you have a dissemination program of the results. Okay, that's fine. I see Andrew with the hand.
Thank you, Enrica. I wanted to ask about how you manage new businesses, because you talked about the fact you have a 5-yearly economic census, and then you use the annual business survey to update the structures and characteristics of businesses in between. So how do you identify new business births each year? Is that from administrative data? Or?
Okay, so yeah, of course we can find new establishment by economic census. Yeah, enumerators for going around and find new establishment, and partially we can find using administrative data. So, for example, labor insurance data, newly establishment, have to submit labor insurance, so that we can find part of the newly established buildings or something like that.
Okay, so by complementing with the administrative data. Okay, any other question? I don't see any hands on. So it's still Andrew, but I think it's from before, or do you have another question?
I was going to ask a follow-up, if I may, just 1 second, which is, I also noticed you take an annual frame, and I wondered why you didn't need a sub-annual frame, such as quarterly frame, because most countries need frames more frequently.
I'm sorry, yeah. We produce this annual frame, annually, and you mean some countries make it monthly or something like that? Yeah, but yeah, we hope so, but we can't now.
Okay, so I see there is another question in the chat from Katerina. She asks, I don't know, Katerina, if you want to take the floor directly.
Yes, Enrica, thank you. It's just maybe something related to what Andrew already said. Maybe I didn't understand very well the model, but I could understand the reason. If you need to update information on annual or infra-annual basis, you need some estimation. And my question, because I didn't understand maybe, was about, is this model estimating variables for existing unit, or just you can estimate also units? Because if I well understood, you don't have periodical data, for example, yearly data, so you have to estimate for the year T+1 something. So my question was about this difference in partial no-response estimation model or total no-response estimation model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this model estimates, okay, the latter, the just estimate variables for existing units. So, yeah, as I said, we can find a new enterprises by economic census or the administrator, and this method is for just existing units.
Okay.
Thank you.
So indeed, it's for estimating variables. Any other question? I don't see. Let me do another round. But I don't see any other hand up. Okay. So if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you very much for the presentation and also the participants to the discussion. I think the topic of disseminating statistics directly from the Statistical Business Register is very relevant, very, very high in the agenda in many statistical offices. And I'm sure that this will be also a topic for future discussion to be continued, let's say. So I think we can close this section for today. We can continue tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Mexico time. So from my side, I would like just to wish you a very nice rest of the day, and I give back the floor to Inegi.
Gracias, Enrica.
We thank you, Enrica. Well, very good. We shall continue tomorrow at 7 a.m. Mexico City time. We appreciate very much all of the participants and basically to the heads of the different sessions that helped us to organize this working group. So therefore, we shall meet again tomorrow. We appreciate your time and we wish you to have a very pleasant rest of the day. And we shall meet again tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Adiós, un saludo especial a los